Hey everyone, welcome back to my YouTube channel. I am here with another video about BSSM. So as you can tell, I've got my mic pretty close to me because I want to make sure my audio is super clear, so that's in my face. But today's video is going to talk about housing in Redding and getting jobs in Redding if you are an American and that's something you're interested in. Also, I really appreciate all the positive feedback that I've been getting from the first video, which was actually quite long, but it was a pretty detailed breakdown of all the important schedule tips and just school layout things that I feel like are really important and helpful to know before you arrive here. And so thank you to everybody who's watched that video and was encouraged and helped by it. Please keep watching it, and I hope that it continues to help you as you make your plans to arrive in Redding in the next couple months. So housing. I know that is a huge concern, obviously, for people moving here from across the country and across the world. I am not an authority on all things related to leases and rental properties and purchasing houses or anything like that, but I can speak from my experience and from the experience of others that I know and how they've kind of transitioned here. Mostly what I just want to give you are some resources, some things that you can check that's going to give you probably the clearest breakdown of where to look for work or where to look for housing before you arrive. My first disclaimer would always be that if it's possible for you to arrive here with plenty of time to go look at housing before you arrange your housing, that would be, I would say, the best situation. Obviously, it requires a little bit of faith because you are coming here without having that arranged. So you'd have to stay with someone, or you'd have to stay in a hotel or an Airbnb. But I can say that actually going and viewing your properties, meeting the people who live there, meeting the property owner, the landlord, these things make a huge difference. And I feel like to make a great transition over here, just making sure you're pretty solid on where you're moving to, that's just such a big deal, you know? So if you feel really comfortable with arranging your housing before you arrive and just like diving in before you've seen it, cool. And there are housing sort of arrangements that really are conducive for that, things like revival apartments and different things that have been super vetted, and the people who run them are like known, and you know, it's all pretty standard procedure. Now those things, that's fine, you don't really have to be here to see it, but anything else where you're actually talking about signing a lease and you know, going into these properties that aren't sort of revival apartments or sort of Bethel overseen living situations, it's just way wiser to actually come here and meet the people that you're going to be living with and renting from. So that's my first disclaimer. It means coming here and just, you know, winging it in a sense, maybe having 3, 4, 5 properties lined up that you want to come check and see and you've already been communicating with, and then trusting God that he will make a way with one of those when you arrive here. But if you're somebody who's like, no, I have to have it lined up before I arrive, I don't want to take my chances, then okay, but obviously in a way you're still taking your chances. So that is the first tip that I would always encourage people. But I'm going to try to put some links down below. These are Facebook pages and websites that I highly recommend you check out as you're in your housing search. The first would be on Facebook. It's called Bethel Redding Housing and BSSM Housing. So if you type in Bethel Redding Housing, that'll typically by keyword search pull up the main page. I think you have to ask to be a member of that, and they may look to see, you know, if you have anything on your Facebook that indicates you're either currently living in Redding or about to move to Redding. They may ask you some questions, or they may just accept you. So yeah, but that is a great Facebook page. That's actually how I found my apartment that I currently live in and have lived in since I moved here. So really helpful. People are posting and needing roommates all the time. So that's a super helpful resource. Then there's also the Bethel School of Supernatural Ministry Facebook page. Now, this is a secondary Facebook page to your first year page that you're automatically going to be given access to. So you'll have to request to join that page. And again, if they can see that you're an incoming first year, that kind of thing, they're going to automatically accept you. So that's another great resource for jobs, and it's a great resource for housing where people will post on it. Alumni often will post there. Many alumni still live in the community, so they're often renting out rooms in their houses or apartments and things like that. So that can be super helpful. Also, your first year page is going to be a great resource. There's people who've already moved here. There's people who've been living in Redding and they've just decided to do first year this year and they've got housing. And so that's going to be potentially somewhere that they post about it. Then there is ivisitredding.com. So www.ivisitredding.com. Again, I will link these things below, but that is a great website that you can use that's going to give you some information, just general info about Redding and different links for housing and posts about housing. And I know of other people who have found their housing specifically through that website. Then the BSSM website. So once you're accepted to first year, once you're on there, there's a bulletin board and people will post housing on that bulletin board. So you can always check that out. That's going to be an additional resource. I found several people actually that were posting looking for roommates there when I first was transitioning into first year. But I already had my housing arranged. So I've seen many different, people make use of the bulletin board on the actual website. And then if you want to be super old school, Bethel Church actually has a physical bulletin board outside of the main sanctuary, sort of in a breezeway between the admin offices and the actual sanctuary building. And their local church members will post about available rooms in their houses, properties they're renting, jobs, odd jobs they need done. So like they literally push pin stuff on this bulletin board. So if you're just someone who's like already up there at Bethel for some reason and you just want to go physically check out options, they've got names and phone numbers and all these listings right there for you. You can look at things like Craigslist. They're just typically super unreliable and, well, that might be an exaggeration. I wouldn't say super unreliable, but if you're trying to live with people that go to Bethel or are in BSSM that are kind of going through the same process you're going through, then looking at these specific housing Facebook pages related to BSSM are going to most likely be your best bet. And then of course you have Airbnb and things like that. If you want to do the more temporary route, more likely to be more expensive. But, if that's something that gets you by for your first month, as you keep looking for the right housing situation, that is always available. Now, one thing that does happen is a lot of times people will come and their housing is not what they hoped it would be, or their roommates are not who they thought they would be, or, that's just life. And so the first month to 2 months of school, there's kind of like a little shuffle of people moving around sometimes, finding the right place to live. So don't lose heart. It's, you're not stuck anywhere. You can always make changes if what you planned on wasn't what you planned on. Now I will say this, Redding, and I will make videos more about the city of Redding. Redding is a little bit older, so most apartment complexes, most houses are kind of aged. So if you're used to a certain type of housing, it may be a slight adjustment, but that's kind of what happens as a student anyway. You just go with it, people share rooms. Sometimes there's lots of people to a house. I know of people who are living in a house right now with like 8 or 9 people, like 2 people to a room and like a 4-bedroom house. Like it's pretty standard. So everybody's living situation can really vary. I'm super blessed. I'm in a 2-bedroom apartment, 2-bathroom apartment, and I have my own room, obviously. And then the other room I have 2 girls staying in, but one is moving away, and so it's going to be me and another girl. And so we're blessed. Really moderate, reasonable rent costs in this particular apartment complex. And that's kind of the case. I would say the living costs in Northern California are super reasonable compared to Southern California, for sure. And even compared to some other parts of the United States in the South, in the North. So I think you'll find that the living costs are quite reasonable. Of course, that really depends on where you're from and what you're used to. But yeah, and so a lot of these properties, many people who go to Bethel rent out homes and have bought apartments and condos and rent them out to students because it's a moneymaker for a lot of people who live here. Students always need housing. So you will find that housing is in abundant supply, okay? So do not stress out from wherever you're living right now and you're thinking, how am I going to arrange housing? I'm not out there. I can't afford to go out there and find housing first. And okay, well, don't worry. There will be housing for you. Everybody knows how this works who lives in Redding. Tons of students leave and tons of students come, so there's always available rooms, even if you have to live somewhere temporary until you find your long-term housing. There are so many people ready and waiting to receive roommates. So yeah, just don't sweat it, okay? Just begin. I would say now is a great time to begin. Third-year graduates are moving. Almost everybody has left by this point who's not staying here in Redding. So this is a great time to start talking to people. Again, this is May right now, so this is the end of May. This is a great time to start talking to people who are currently living in Redding and are ready to have new people join their housing. A lot of people will secure their spot by paying in advance, or they'll pay for, the whole summer, even though they're not going to move in until August, just so they know that they have a spot secured. Again, this is if you just find your dream place on Facebook and they post all these great photos and you know that you want to do this and you feel secure even without having come and met the people and seen it, then, do what you have to do. A lot of people do things like that just because they want to feel confident that they have housing when they arrive. Everybody's different. Some people will risk it, some people won't. So that's my take on housing. I hope that that's somewhat helpful. I know there's so many things otherwise, but just don't worry about some of the things that you would typically have to worry when you're moving to a new country, just because this is so done. Like the Redding Utility Company, like everybody in this community knows that foreign people move here and Americans from all over America move here. And they know the shuffle of Bethel students coming and going. So there are contingency plans and there are people ready to receive you. So just start making contacts with people. If you see somebody posting about a house and you really like it, or an apartment and you really feel like, hey, that feels good, pray about it. Ask to Skype the person or talk to them on the phone. People do that kind of stuff all the time. If you want to start making a relationship with them in advance, you have the summer to do that. So take your time and just get to know people. And then settle on the space that feels good to you, and then talk about, okay, how do we handle this? A lot of properties will have a 9-month lease program, especially if they're related to Bethel, and if they're Bethel church members who own the property or whatever. A lot of them will work with you because they know how students come and go, especially foreign students, as they cannot stay longer than 9 months. And then some properties are hard and fast about a 1-year lease. My property is month to month, so there's also those cases where they're super chill about the lease agreement, and you just sign month to month to month and you leave when you want to leave. So there's just a lot of flexibility. Yeah. Housing. Then I'll talk about getting jobs in Redding. So if you're an American and you're looking to work, or you're a green card holder, or American resident, whatever the different terms are, you can totally work in Redding. In fact, there are more jobs in Redding than you would think. It really depends on the time of year that you arrive, obviously. Sorry, I mess with my hair a lot when it's down and I'm talking. But there are lots of available jobs. Now, a lot of them are retail, service industry, food industry, things like that. So, if you have done a corporate career for a long time, or you ran your own business, or you are a professor or whatever, okay, some of the jobs that are available may not be up to your standards or what you have done in your past, but if you need to work, there's available jobs. If you don't mind sort of humbling yourself and doing things you haven't done in a while, or maybe something you've never done, but they're here. And especially this time of year when all the students leave, this is a great time to talk with employers and scoop up the jobs that were abandoned, or getting in town, a little bit earlier than the students who start arriving, like early August or so. That's a great opportunity to scoop up jobs before all the students start hitting them. And again, a lot of employers in the community are aware of the student schedule of Bethel, because Bethel is a 10,000 person church, and they have over 2,400 students that come and go every single year, and the number keeps growing. So the community's super aware of how this works. And you have businesses that are really willing to work with that kind of a schedule, and they're flexible. And then you have businesses that flat out are not. They just don't want to deal with the up and down of the BSSM schedule, because BSSM students are super busy. You have, as I've stated in my original video, so many things that you are required to be at, that it can sometimes make work a little bit of a hassle, but can be done. And there are businesses that will work around that sort of a schedule. But again, most likely service industry, food industry, caretaking, nannying. If you want to be a nanny, there's jobs like that very readily oftentimes. Working for gyms, lifeguarding, YMCA, weight training, or personal training, I guess. Yeah, so these sorts of things are available. You will obviously need to look for jobs that are looking for people to work in the mornings. So the shifts that start early morning until like 12 in the afternoon, because you have school most of the week, from 12:30 to 3:45-ish. Or jobs that start after 4 o'clock and go into the evening. Or jobs that are strictly weekends, because you will have Fridays, Saturdays, and Sundays available to you to work, with the exception of your mandatory church service. But if you do work, the school can arrange for you to have a standardized church service, so your schedule's not rotating all the time, that you have to be at a different church service every 5 weeks. So if you just communicate these things to your revival group pastor, they can make sure you are standardized to one service all year, so that you can correlate your work schedule to that. So yeah. The minimum wage in Redding right now is $10.50. That's for all of California. And that's for small businesses. If it's a major corporation, they have to pay $11 an hour. So if you're a small business, they're paying you $10.50 an hour. If you are a larger business, it's $11 an hour, and it's going up 50 cents every 6 months until the standard minimum wage in the state of California is $15 an hour. So that'll be a few years from now, but that's where they're headed. So, you're probably working maybe 20 to 25 hours a week on about $10.50 an hour if you're doing your standard service industry, retail kind of job, not with tips. So if you're a waitress or whatever, you're going to make $10.50 an hour plus tips. So sometimes waitressing, especially in California, can be super lucrative. So that's something to consider. Those jobs can get snagged up pretty quickly, and they want people with good waitressing and waitering experience. But those jobs are here in Redding. So if you're looking for jobs like that, of course, Indeed.com is a job resource. Craigslist, Monster.com. But the thing that I used most frequently, and a lot of people that I know used, was Bethel Redding /BSSM classified ads on Facebook. So you type in Bethel Redding ads, or BSSM classified ads, or Bethel Redding classifieds. Any of those keywords will bring up a specific Facebook page, very similar to the Bethel Redding housing page that I mentioned earlier. The Bethel Redding BSSM classified ads page is a page where people related to the Bethel community, BSSM alumni, so on and so forth, they will post jobs that they have available, jobs that they saw posted in the community, jobs that they've heard about. So it's a great resource for the community to network and help each other out when they're looking for work. And you can always look on Bethel Church's website, because they're often hiring for janitorial staff, for helping out with the preschool, nursery team members, things like this that may work around your schedule. Can't guarantee it, but the church is oftentimes looking for different people, and yeah, those are some resources for you. Most people know how to find a job. I mean, you can walk into Target. Things like this are going to work with the school schedule. And then you have some companies like Hobby Lobby, for example, that just will not work with you if you can't work a full 40-hour a work week shift. Many students who have worked while they're in school have said many times that they did not recommend working more than 20 to 25 hours a week, because school's super demanding. You have to do a lot of reading, you have to be at a lot of events, and you want to hang out with your friends. You want to make sure you have plenty of time to spend in the secret place with Jesus. So if you are working 30 plus hours a week, you're really going to burn the candle at both ends and struggle. So again, that's why there's a greater emphasis on faith, number one, trusting the Lord to provide, and number two, on doing what fundraising you can do before you arrive so that you can take as much of that burden to work off of your shoulders. But it's really all about knowing your season. What is your season? Is your season a season where you're supposed to live with a house full of 8 people and share your room with 2 to 3 people? Are you in a season where you need to live by yourself and sacrifice a little bit to have your own bedroom? Are you in a season where God's asking you to work and he's going to give you the grace to do school and work really well? Or are you in a season where he's asking you to enter into deep trust with him and not work at all and watch him provide for you? It's really knowing your season. I know a lot of Americans feel this pressure to work because it looks good. It makes sense. It seems logical. And even though none of the foreign students can work, and they just come here by faith or fundraise a ton before arriving, Americans feel this sense of like, well, if we can work, we should work. And while I understand that thinking, it's really about hearing what God's saying, because school takes you down such a deep, powerful road with Jesus. It's like a sabbatical. It is what you make it into. It can become as deep and as life-changing as you want it to be, and it really depends on how much time you spend with him, not just in school but outside of school, and how much you allow yourself to really go into the places that Holy Spirit is leading you into. So you really want to know what he's speaking for your season. So while I'm happy to encourage you to get a job, and here's jobs that are out there and what to look for, what to expect, trying to set a fair expectation of what the community looks like. At the same time, just make sure you know what God's actually calling you to in this season, because you don't want to work if that's not what he's saying for you, because there's something he's got for you that a job would just hold you back from. And then at the same time, if he's calling you to work, that means, wow, he's got something for you in that job. So it's super important to hear his voice. But I just want to say, jobs are possible. I know a lot of people think Redding is a very small community, less than 100,000 people in the city limits. And so a lot of times people just think there's no jobs available and they're not going to work with my schedule. Actually, again, just like housing is way more readily available than you think it'll be, so are jobs. It's just a matter of going out and looking and being honest about that you're a student at BSSM, which most people look favorably on. BSSM students have tended to be excellent workers, always showing up on time, doing a great job at their work, being very honoring and respectful. So most business owners want to hire you, but they need you to be super clear and knowledgeable about your schedule, and make sure you're asking off well in advance for things, making sure you're communicating that you have retreat well in advance, these sorts of things, and people will work with you. So jobs are available. You just may have to lower your expectations of what kind of job is out there. But at the same time, when you're a student, service industry, being a barista, working in retail, working at a gym, these kinds of things, that's pretty typical work that's available. A lot of people did nannying. Not most girls, but many females that I went to school with would nanny. But honestly, I was surprised at how many people did not work, including Americans. And so they just did what needed to be done to come here and either trust God for finances, or they brought enough with them, or had a great community to support them. So anyway, that was my experience of this year. I'm sure that they could range. If you have questions, I know this is more of an overview, and there's tons of tiny situations that could come up in so many different directions pertaining to housing. But I think the most important thing is praying, asking God what kind of housing he wants you to pursue this year. and then going after that. And just being diligent to check those pages every day, message the people that interest you, build relationship where you can, and, look at jobs in the same way. And just, I would say come out here. If you can come out here before school, a couple weeks before school, that's just gonna take a lot of stress off, so you can enjoy transitioning into your first day of classes once you've got everything arranged. Again, like I said in my first video, which I highly recommend you going and watching if you've got just like 50 minutes to give to this video, it talks about my transition here, and I moved here a year before I did school. I didn't even know I was going to do school, honestly. I just moved here because God told me to, and because he said Bethel was my tribe and it was time for me to join them. So I came out here, and by faith, I didn't know where I'd live or what I would do for a living, but he provided all of it. And through being able to work and get adjusted to the community and gradually get furniture and things for my house, when it was time for me to apply for school and transition into school, it was such a amazing and peaceful experience because I wasn't scattered and just trying to make a bunch of things happen. Things like Revival, the Revival apartments, there's different housing communities that are actually like communities that are set up to help you live in community with a large group of females or a large group of males. These things are all set up for you, are great, especially for students who've never lived on their own before, first time out of mom and dad's house, or they're also great for foreign students who don't want the hassle of having to buy furniture that they know they're not going to need after 9 months and they're not going to use again. So furnished housing is super ideal if you don't have any kind of long-term plan or commitment to the community. And there are lots of different housing communities, and they will, if they're not already, they will certainly start advertising themselves on those BSSM pages and taking applications for those kinds of things. So please ask me questions if you have them. I'm